My always first question to the projects is, what is your key market? What is that, genre of people that you're targeting at? There is no age barrier, there is no gender barrier. We need kids to come and test run the gaming projects. Always look at a long run vision of sustainability. Don't look in for a short term gain and be excited and happy about it, because that is not the right metrics. We're giving the founders an immediate access to what? User network. That's what we are here for. We are basically embedding the project into a multi-layered system of growth and sustainability. We very purely, clearly stand by this value.
Today's episode is, centralized exchanges as strategic catalysts, a GTM playbook with Shruti Kohli of Bitro. I am your host, Kishan Balaji, Ecosystem Manager for XTC Network. Welcome to the XTC India podcast, where we interrogate the architectures, mechanisms, and behavioral incentives that underpin the next frontier of digital economies. I'm your host, Kishan Balaji. Today's conversation centers around a vital yet often underestimated player in the Web3 go-to-market stack, the centralized exchange. And to unpack its strategic depth, we are joined by someone who bridges the traditional and decentralized worlds with unusual fluency. Shruti Kohli leads business development at Bitro, a global digital asset exchange where she's spearheaded strategic partnerships, listings, and market ecosystem integrations for over 3.5 years. She's a chartered accountant and a gold medalist MBA in finance with over a decade of consulting experience at EY, where she specialized in regulatory compliance and taxation across high-stakes verticals like telecom. She has worked alongside top-tier legal professionals, advising marquee clients on complex financial frameworks outside the boardroom. She's a former national level basketball player, a creative collaborator with fashion legend Rohit Bal, and a passionate advocate for diversity in Web3 leadership. She currently leads the India chapter of Crypto Female, a global initiative empowering women in blockchain, and is an angel investor in several early stage startups. Oof, that's a lot, Shruti. Shruti, it's an honor to have you with us. So let's move on to the strategic framing of SEX or CEX in GTM. So let's begin at a systems level. Within the conceptual framework of GTM strategy, often defined by market segmentation, product channel fit, and activation dynamics, how should we theoretically position centralized exchanges?
Thank you, Kishan. People who know me, they also know that I'm the one who loves talking and always leading the discussions. And I think you're quite lucky that you led this discussion today, because people who know me, they say I don't let them talk. Well, being a very detail-oriented person and always going into the right nitty-gritties. Before I give my answer, let me correct you there. I'm not a national basketball player, sorry. I played at my college level and kind of represented the college. The only reason for that was that I was able to bunk my classes and be out in the field, because I am like a jack of all but masters of none, and that's very much me. That's very much my personality, and I think that is why that also kind of connects, that being a chartered accountant and being like my parents being so proud that their daughter is a chartered accountant. I'm here at Bitro doing BD. At times told by a lot of folks that, why are you taking my job away? I'm not taking anyone's job away. This comes to me naturally. Let me flex a bit. Anyways, Kishan, good to see you again here. And coming to your question about strategic framing of centralized exchanges in the GTM. Being a finance, I never knew what a GTM is. I'm glad that over the 3.5 years, I've kind of mastered this GTM and sitting here and giving a comment on that. So, well, at GTM system levels, if you ask me, there is a very different perception of an exchange, because, I talk to like so many early stage projects. Most of them are developers and most of them are the techies, and they have a very different perception of the exchanges. And each time I talk to them, I really love to, clarify a lot of things, that centralized exchanges are much, much more beyond a liquidity endpoint. For me, if I have to summarize it in 2 words, we are basically a growth infrastructure, which is backed by a whole set of users who are able to amplify and understand what you're doing. So that is where I feel that, that is where the key role of a centralized exchange comes in. Founders often focus on segmentation, distribution, product readiness. But many times, they overlook or, are not having hands-on the exchange alignment at a very strategic layer. So, of course, every project, I know they have a very good structure of the team and they do have strategic heads. But, what is very important is not to look at a centralized exchange just for the sake of listing a token and having like a great, X growth on a particular, duration of time the moment you launch. It's basically what we are doing is we're giving the founders an immediate access to what user network. That's what we are here for. And embedded yield mechanisms, and of course a very trusted asset listing coming on the exchange in front of our users. So from a market segmentation lens, if we are supposed to analyze this, we are interfacing with different stakeholders, right? So the moment you are there in the market, your GTM strategy needs to have a connection with different stakeholders. Those stakeholders could be the liquidity providers. If you're looking for an additional fundraising, so you're bringing an amplification in front of the VCs or in front of the investors. If you're planning to do like a second version launch or a V2 launch, you're making a market readiness. And that is where an exchange plays a very, very important role. So we are kind of giving a credibility. Of course, treat centralized exchange as your go-to-market amplifier. I will never deny that because I am, purely trusted in that we are definitely one avenue for a go-to-market amplifier. So when woven correctly into the GTM early stage, you are thinking at aloud and thinking like 10 steps ahead about your, when you launch. After that, what should be the, continuous engagement to users? Believe me, there is nothing that's going to pull you back. And here, before I conclude this answer, always look at a long run vision of sustainability. Don't look in for a short term gain and be excited and happy about it because that is not the right metrics.
100% agree with you over there, and thank you for that clear explanation. So when you talk about long term, there are a lot of exchanges that also put in, they list meme coins, right? And a lot of these meme coins not necessarily as long.
Of course, one recipe won't apply to the other one. Let's be clear on that.
Yeah. So I just wanted to ask, what is the main reason why a meme coin would land up on a CEX?
I think it's also very important to keep our traders quite, always into a gamification mode. And it's always fun to have certain elements which give you like a hype or a, quick impulse. Yeah. So for that, of course, meme tokens are where they create the balance, right? And of course, if we look at a trader base or the user base that we have from all age groups, right? We cater to every kind of person. And the young generation, and here when I say young, I also include people who are like 14 or something, because I've been really hearing out that how kids these days on the block are discussing about trading, and which is quite strange. But I think meme tokens play a very good role over there, and it's just like a fun element.
Yeah. Do you know that they just allowed 10-year-old kids to open their own bank accounts? You heard about it?
I do see that. It's a good sense that they're getting responsible at a younger age. Well, when I was 10, I think I was more concerned that what would be the best candy I should pick up from the grocery store and make sure that my mom's life is difficult. But yeah, kids are too different from what we are. Yeah, but we are catching up with them.
Anyway, let's move on to segment 2. Exchange as a value orchestrator. So most narratives around CEXs focus on liquidity access or token discoverability. But how does Bitrue, from a systems design perspective, structure itself as a value orchestrator, bridging the operational with the strategic for new listings?
Well, yes, Web3 taught me another new word, orchestration. I mean, so often we've been using these words and it makes the whole sentence look so beautiful. It took me again a while to completely decode what this word means, because for me, orchestration always meant that orchestra, where as a student, like I said, I used to do anything and everything. Though I had the worst voice in the school, but I would ensure that the teacher allows me to stand right in the front row and just stand like this, and just you have to keep opening your mouth. Don't even try to take out your voice. So orchestra, that is what I get to know. But yeah, now finally I decoded the meaning of orchestration layer, and I think I should be able to take this over really well. That's actually a very good prompt, because too often, centralized exchanges are merely reduced to liquidity and discoverability, and it gets very difficult for me to go back to basics to explain that, we need to decode what a value orchestrator per se would mean.
Yeah.
So we are not basically your tokens with the traders, right? We are not doing that. I am not sitting here, or as an exchange, we are not sitting here that the XYZ token is there and I need to ensure that it reaches this ABC trader and I ensure that ABC trader does this number of trading on that. That's not what we are here for. We are basically embedding the projects into a multi-layered system of growth and sustainability. I mean, we very purely, clearly stand by this value. Structurally, what we do is we kind of build up different layers of feedback loops. We kind of do like in-depth compliance and due diligence. Over here, due diligence doesn't mean that we are trying to find out what's your net worth or something. No, we are trying to understand that what is that you're trying to connect to. My always first question to the project is, what is your key market? What is that genre of people that you're targeting at? Basis those feedback, we try to align a ground for the project's life cycle.
Got it.
So our listing will never stop at the TGE or the launch. No. And many times, I'm sure the projects, if any of them are listening to my podcast today, I have always stressed a lot about the post-listing campaigns. I have never stressed them to do everything on day one. And, we kind of just create the hype within the first week or 20 days. And then we are disappeared in the thin air. We try to offer, more time span campaigns. We try to kind of build up a whole roadmap from our side. Strategically, we also think very broadly in terms of the narrative timing. And though narrative sounds like a very overrated word these days because everybody talks about it's a narrative game, but it's very important to clearly analyze, deep dive into it.
Yeah.
Good words, trying to get in the best KOLs, trying to, of course, UX, UI play a very important role. I'm not going to deny that. But the narrative timing, resonating it with the demand, it's an evolving space that we are in. What could be very trending, probably a month back, by the time you are ready to go to the market, may have, downsized a bit. So we have to ensure that is the project riding a macro wave? Is it like, fitting in the verticals? Is it fitting into, the user base that we are targeting at? And if yes, we are in a position to bring it with a larger campaign and bring in the ecosystem support to it and bring in the real value orchestrator layer to what we are providing. So it's more about credibility than activation, of course, expansion and sustainability. And that's how we turn any execution into a successful launch.
Superb. So now let's move on to listings as market signaling mechanisms. Let's exchange with signaling theory. In asymmetric information environments, a listing on a CEX often acts as a proxy for credibility. How do you view the exchange's role as a signaling entity, particularly when interfacing with risk-sensitive stakeholders like institutions?
So what I feel is that with every centralized exchange listing, it's more than just an event, right?
Yeah.
It's more like a market-wide signal that you're sending out. And we being an exchange, we listing projects. So there is a kind of a faith or a credibility that lies with all our stakeholders. Stakeholders over here, again, reiterating, could be from the foundation level, could be from the institutions, the funds, the users on the platform. And it actually brings out a messaging that the project has passed a quality threshold. We are very, very conscious about this fact because we want to act more as a credibility filter by doing like a deep diligence, understanding and testing the tokenomics. And that is why, repeatedly, I try to reiterate about the sustainability. And I'm really glad that off late people have become more stronger, more considerate about the ethics. The legal aspect is slowly creeping in. And, with all the new regulations and, obviously projects trying to abide by that. Because if you remember, Kishan, about a decade back when this whole Web3 or the crypto thing came in place, one normal thing was that people were able to siphon out the funds in a different manner.
Yeah.
But today, that whole angle, that whole wave has completely changed. So blockchain was essentially done to make everything transparent, right?
Yeah.
So the whole concept was about bringing more transparency, bringing more clarity and trying to avoid any unnecessary bridges. So as an exchange, our endeavor is to ensure that we are dealing with a very, risk-sensitive stakeholders, especially the, institutional ones, by the way.
Yeah.
So this is not all which is like a bet early, but absolutely watch the signal trade. So in a way, Bitro listing doesn't just unlock the liquidity here. What it activates is a legibility in a very fragmented, noisy market, but also signaling, trying to bring in the market-wide signal, as I mentioned earlier.
Okay. Let's move on to segment 4, which is post-listing utility and network convergence. Yeah. So beyond the listing event, how does Bitrue embed projects into broader value networks? whether through staking, cross-chain integrations, or co-marketing nodes. Can you share any examples where ecosystem convergence post-listing created outsized value?
So, well, I have plethora of examples here, but
Okay.
doing this with XTC, let's take it to XTC.
Let's take it to XTC. Yeah.
Coming to XTC, Christian, I know you've been a part of this ecosystem, but we were one of the pioneer exchanges to get XTC as a base pair. Now that's a testimony, right? That we did not only bother about like I got a bunch of projects to list. I remember, I think it was 2023. Yeah, we're in 2025, right? So yeah, 2023. I remember one of your ecosystem heads, without naming him, he knows who I'm talking about if he's listening to my podcast. It's definitely you that I'm talking about. We just had a very informal chat, just asking, hey, how are things going? How is Singapore doing? Very simple chat we had. And while doing that, we discovered that there are certain projects ready on the XTC. So what we did was started doing like a celebration week. So to make more noise and make a market readiness for the upcoming projects, we did some cross-marketing promotions. And what we did was we launched those projects along with launching XTC as a base pair.
Okay.
And then almost you can say like over a span of 15 to 20 days, it was all noise about XTC. So the focus again, like coming back, we as an exchange could have easily just listed the tokens and just moved ahead to targets, but that's not what we do. We ensure that there are these regular interactions with the projects already listed. Of course, we do get a lot of negative feedbacks also, and I'm always ready to get onto the call and take the bait, but without, getting in these more value additions. Now, if you look at today, Kishan, staking has become such a big thing. Like people have, started looking at staking as the best way to kind of have a regular passive income. So what we are also working on, and I would really request all our viewers to watch that section out for. We would be enabling a lot of integration tools with the staking, which is there with the base foundation.
Okay.
So that initiative we are working on already. If you go to the BitTrue website, you can go under the blog section. Already for another foundation, without naming it, we have become the official stake providers for them, yielding partners for them. And that is not just that stops over there. In the next coming weeks, you'll be seeing a lot of focus on that. Of course, a lot of XTC projects have also gone multi-chain, and we have been pioneering in supporting them and then having tools to ensure that there's a proper and seamless bridging. And of course, sitting here doing a podcast with XTC, though we did not have any XTC listing in the last 3 months, but still sitting here doing this podcast with you is a testimony that we are here to support throughout, make as much of noise, spread as much of education. And we are also one of your key partners for your incubation programs, by the way.
Yeah.
So I have the opportunity to informally get onto many calls with the upcoming projects, sort out their, concerns, issues, answer them. Because like I said, most of them are techies, most of them are developers.
Yeah.
And for us, the kind of information that we have, the kind of use cases we have, the kind of, projects over the last 3.5 years I've personally seen getting floated in the market, I love to share those experiences with them, give them the right, way to proceed forward so that we make this whole economy grow together.
Yeah, that's really important. That's true. And so about the listing of XTC on BitTrue, where are we on that?
So XTC is one of our key assets. I have the opportunity to be working with your global team. We're soon doing campaign with XTC, so keep watching out. I don't want to open or spill all the beans right now because I love doing everything at the last minute. That's very much me. And I would just say keep watching. There is a lot in store to be collaborated and work together with XTC.
Yeah, I'm part of the same group, so I'm looking forward to this, Shruti. So the segment which is structural inclusion in Web3 leadership. Shruti, I see you as a leader in the Web3 space. I see that you connect a lot of people. I see that you connect a lot of projects and you do a lot for the Web3 ecosystem. And that is my observation of you. So your leadership within Crypto Female points to a larger question, right? So how do we operationalize gender equality in Web3? Not just through visibility, but via institutional power structures. What levers need to shift?
So, Kishan, for me, people who know me, and I've gone very vocal about it at several occasions, several platforms, I don't think there's anything like a gender inequality. The very fact that you and I are sitting here and doing a podcast, again, I don't have to say anything, right? So for me, the reason for joining Crypto Female, it has a word female, but we have a lot of male members as a part of our community, which are purely supporting us. I work for several companies and entities where we have a great balance. And to my mind, till date, I don't think so. Any of the women that I've spoken to who's willing to work, and at the same time, any man also for that matter who's willing to work and be dedicated, has ever thought about a gender inequality issue. It's all in the head, and I think it's just like for example, I'll just slightly deviate from Web3 and bring it to a normal.
Yeah, please.
Normal life example. These days, I'm not allowed to eat sugar. So I just happened to ask, I can't stay without chocolates. Why no sugar? Somebody said there's a concept called a sugar rush. I was like, dude, if there was something like a sugar rush, I would have been hospitalized by now. So I think these are just some jargons that people have picked up.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, many times, I know I don't have much followers on Twitter and people really don't bother about my post on Twitter. It's generally just me liking my own tweet post. But the other day, I read one tweet which was about a recent incident or a recent noise that is being made in the Web3. And he just wrote a very random comment or a random post which was targeting about nationalities, about Indians. So my simple answer to him was, can we just stop getting more followers and eyeballs because we want to bring in a concept which is hitting the society? So I think even gender equality is purely for some set of people trying to bring in more visibility to themselves. There is nothing like that. And I have myself got the opportunity to share the stage with the best people. So for me, that's why it's called people. It's never called a man or a woman. It's people. Web3 folks. And now we have also replaced the word sir, S-I-R, with S-E-R.
Yeah, S-E-R.
So on that gender equality thing, I'm totally out of it, girls.
Yeah.
And any girl feeling please DM me. I'm more than happy to take up with you, because wherever any girl, any female is willing to work, there's a dedication without that sensitive part that, hey, I'm a girl. Sorry, we are not friends. So coming to Crypto Female, I'll give you a quick background about.
Yeah, please do.
We are here purely to support people, spread education. All of us who form this Crypto DAO, we are from different countries. We have like a chapter in Germany, UK, Turkey is our headquarters, India, Philippines, Indonesia, there are a couple of more. I'm not going to name all the countries. But our endeavor is that, we are able to spread education to those people who have not been able to obtain a formal education. And also let them know that blockchain or Web3 is not only for people who have a IT degree or are tech guys. It's for anyone and everyone. Say, for example, if you're an artist, you can be onboarded as an NFT designer, right?
Yeah.
So we are trying to spread that word that, there is, and everybody is learning in this environment. So there is no age barrier, there is no gender barrier. We need kids to come and test run the gaming projects. We need, younger generation to come and give their feeler. I have myself worked with my school, the school where I did my 12th grade. I've included those 10th grade, 11th grade students to kind of even design stickers for us.
Oh, nice.
So it is for everyone. So the whole purpose of Crypto Female and me being a part of that is a community support. We don't have any kind of business models, no commercials. We are here to support. So whatever free time we have, people who are part of Crypto Female, we are just trying to help out each other. It's a very simple mission that.
Superb. Thanks for clearing out all of those questions and about, introducing yourself and what you're doing. And it's amazing what you're doing, Shruti. I'm a follower of you right now. So,
oh my, I'm obliged.
Okay, so segment 6, founder strategy and GTM maturity. Let's close with praxis. When advising a Web3 founder preparing to integrate a CEX listing into their GTM stack, what are the most common conceptual fallacies or strategic blind spots you encounter?
So I believe that today's exchange listings have also become a very complex, and I think 90% of the energy is spent by the founders in the pre-listing work, which is basically negotiating with the exchanges, completing the long-drawn due diligence forms, doing the necessary PRs, getting across all the KOLs, working on the tokenomics, then also trying to satisfy your investors at what kind of unlocks we'll get from the TGE. So, 90% of the energy is spent there. But, many times I've noticed that they completely, I won't say they forget or they overlook, but somewhere, the post-listing activations, they are kind of, taken a backseat. So this is something, when I get onto calls, and believe me, because of this, I have lost a lot of deals, because I be very transparent and upfront to them that what is the ROI you're trying to draw by listing with me?
Mm-hmm.
So it's always the other way around. I ask them the question that, if you're coming on BitTrue, why? What have you, seen in us? And then, of course, it's easier for me to explain them that for every penny that you're going to be giving to BitTrue, or every energy. So when I say energy and penny here, doesn't just mean about your funds.
Yeah.
It also means about your time, trusting in us. So it has to be like a good ROI for them. And that is what, BitTrue clearly, each one of us at BitTrue believes in that. So for me, that post-listing activations, like, ensuring a steady liquidity, you having community loops coming in, brand momentums, incentives, staking, all that is something, that is very essential for the founders to have a look at it. Also, be very cautious about your token designs and your mechanics of distribution. So, it's easier to build treasury, but it's much more easier to let it go. So that is something, which I mean, that's like a burning potential. And people who have been advising on Web3 projects, I know there is no correct answer to this. There is no right or wrong over here. But yes, I do sound a bit negative to them at times. But being a traditional Web2 person or a traditional finance person, and plus working in taxation, like, for me, it's always like looking on the other side with a long-term vision. So for me, again, like, sustainability in the long run is always prioritized against, those quick profits and getting that fame for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
We are here to stay for it.
And you have mentioned this earlier in the podcast as well. Long term always wins.
Absolutely.
And you having so much of experience on the other side also helps, right? It brings in a different perspective, because a lot of Web3 founders, Web3 investors and retail, they live in La La Land. Sometimes it's nice to bring them back to reality, ground them, tell them, hey, listen, this is what you got to do.
Exactly.
I agree with you. So anyway, Shruti, this has been an intellectually dense and refreshingly grounded dialogue. Your synthesis of regulatory insight, market architecture, and strategic empathy adds real texture to a space that too often moves on hype and only hype. To our listeners, thank you for engaging with us on this high resolution exploration. Follow the XDC India podcast as we continue decoding Web3 through the lenses of theory, execution, and ecosystem intelligence. Until next time, build deliberately, think long, and stay decentralized.